The storm that grounded my flight turned out to be the best weather of my life. I should have been in Chicago, sitting through another mind-numbing conference about security system integration. Instead, I was standing in my own hallway at 11:30 on a Tuesday night, watching my wife panic. "Rowan, thank goodness you're home early." Maren's voice carried that particular strain I'd learned to recognize over 15 years of marriage. The same tone she used when explaining why she'd spent $3,000 on a purse or why she'd forgotten to mention her mother was coming to visit. I set my overnight bag down and studied her face. Even at nearly midnight, Maren looked perfectly put together. Her blonde hair was styled, her makeup flawless, her silk pajama set probably cost more than most people's monthly grocery budget. But her hands were shaking as she fumbled with her phone. "Conference got canceled," I said, loosening my tie. "Storm grounded everything out of Logan. What are you doing up so late?" "Oh, couldn't sleep." She gestured vaguely toward the kitchen. "I thought I heard something earlier. Maybe someone trying the front door. I wanted to check the camera footage, but I can't remember how to access the storage." I'd installed our security system myself 3 years ago. Maren had shown zero interest in learning how it worked, despite my multiple attempts to walk her through the basics. Now suddenly, she needed to review footage at midnight. "Which camera?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. "The hallway one, the one that shows the front door and the guest room entrance." Of course. The guest room where my business partner Blaine had been spending an unusual amount of time lately, helping Maren with what she called project planning for our company's expansion. The same guest room that was directly across from our master bedroom, with a door that faced the hallway camera at the perfect angle. "How long do we keep the camera footage?" Maren asked, trying to sound casual and failing spectacularly. I pretended to think about it. "About a week, I think." "Why?" The relief that flashed across her face lasted exactly 3 seconds. Then she realized what that meant, and the color drained from her cheeks. "A week," she repeated slowly. "Give or take. The system cycles through automatically, but I can always pull specific files if needed." I watched her absorb this information. "Something specific you're looking for?" No, just curious about how it all works." She was already moving toward the hallway closet where I kept the security equipment. "Maybe I should learn more about the system, in case of emergencies." I followed her, genuinely curious to see how far she'd take this. Maren opened the closet and stared at the rack of equipment like it was written in ancient hieroglyphics. Her fingers hovered over the main storage unit, but she didn't touch anything. "It's pretty complicated," I said helpfully. "The SD card stores the most recent footage, but everything gets backed up to the cloud server automatically. Want me to show you how to access it?" "That's okay," she said quickly. "I don't want to mess anything up." But she didn't move away from the closet. She kept staring at the storage unit, and I could practically see the wheels turning in her head. She was calculating something, trying to figure out if she could delete the files without me noticing. "I'm going to grab a beer," I announced. "Long day of travel, even if it was a short trip." I walked to the kitchen, opened the refrigerator, and counted to 30. When I returned to the hallway, Maren was still standing in front of the open closet, but now she had her phone out and was typing frantically. The SD card from the hallway camera was already in my pocket. I'd pulled it 20 minutes ago, right after I'd parked in the garage and noticed Blaine's BMW wasn't in our driveway where it had been when I'd left for the airport that morning. But it had been there recently. I could tell from the oil stain on the concrete and the way the gravel was disturbed near the garage door. "Everything okay, honey?" I asked, taking a sip of my beer. Maren jumped like I'd fired a gun. "Fine. Everything's fine. I was just—" She gestured helplessly at the equipment rack. "You know what? Let me show you how this works." I set my beer down and reached into the closet, making a show of checking the connections. "See? The main camera feeds come through here, and the storage unit logs everything automatically." I opened the storage compartment and made a surprised sound. Huh, that's weird. What's weird? The SD card isn't seated properly. Sometimes they work loose if there's vibration from the washing machine. I pretended to adjust something, then closed the compartment. There we go. Should be fine now. Maren's face went through several interesting expressions: hope, confusion, and finally a kind of desperate calculation. So the footage from today would be on that card? Today, yesterday, probably back to last Tuesday. Like I said, about a week. I picked up my beer again. Why? Did you see something suspicious? No, nothing like that. I just want to understand how everything works. We stood there in the hallway, both of us knowing the other was lying, both of us pretending everything was normal. It was almost funny, in a way that made my chest feel tight and my hands want to form fists. I'm going to take a shower, I said finally. Early morning tomorrow. Of course. Good idea. I headed toward our bedroom, then paused at the doorway. Oh, Maren, if you do want to check the footage for any reason, just let me know. I can pull specific timestamps, enhance the image quality, that sort of thing. The system keeps very detailed logs. The look she gave me could have frozen water in July. I closed the bedroom door and sat down at my desk, pulling out my laptop and the SD card. The files copied quickly, and I renamed them by date and timestamp. The video quality was excellent, even in low light. I'd spent good money on those cameras. 5 minutes later, I had a very clear, very detailed recording of my wife leading my business partner into our guest room at 2:15 on Tuesday afternoon. The timestamp showed they'd stayed for exactly 47 minutes. The audio pickup was good enough to catch Maren's laughter echoing from behind the closed door. I exported the clip, backed it up to a read-only drive, and logged the hash values. Then I pulled the property access logs from our smart lock system. Every time someone used a key code to enter the house, the system recorded it automatically. Blaine's code showed up 17 times in the past month, always during business hours when I was supposedly at the office. The timestamps matched the video frames perfectly. I attached screenshots from the camera app showing Maren's login history. She'd been checking the footage regularly, probably making sure I hadn't reviewed it yet. The irony was beautiful. Her own paranoia had created a digital trail of her guilt. I heard the hallway closet open again. Maren was back, probably trying to figure out how to delete the files. I opened my email and started typing. The first message went to Lisa Dorsey, Blaine's wife. We'd met dozens of times at company events and neighborhood barbecues. She was sharp, funny, and had always struck me as someone who didn't suffer fools gladly. The subject line was simple: something you need to see. I attached the video clip, the access logs, and the screenshots. Then I wrote a brief explanation of what the files contained and how I'd discovered them. I kept it factual, professional, and devastating. The second email went to Robert Chen, the chairman of our company's board of directors. Blaine and I were minority partners, but we'd been pushing for a larger stake in the business. This footage would complicate those negotiations considerably. I saved both messages as drafts and checked the timestamp. 11:52 p.m. Maren was still in the hallway, and I could hear her muttering to herself as she tried to figure out the equipment. My phone buzzed with a text message. From Blaine, of course. Everything okay? Maren says you came home early. I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, all good. Just a change of plans. Another buzz. Great. See you at the office tomorrow. We should talk about the Peterson contract. Looking forward to it, I replied. I heard Maren's footsteps in the hallway, then the sound of the closet door closing. A moment later, she knocked softly on the bedroom door. Rowan, are you still awake? Come in. She opened the door and leaned against the frame. I was thinking about what you said, about the camera system. Maybe I should learn how to use it properly. Sure, we can go over it this weekend. Actually, I was wondering if there's a way to, clear out old footage, to make room for new files. I looked up from my laptop. The system does that automatically. Why? No reason. I just thought maybe we were storing too much unnecessary data. The storage capacity is pretty substantial. We'd have to record continuously for about 6 months before running into space issues. She absorbed this information with visible discomfort. 6 months? Give or take. Why? Are you worried about privacy or something? Maybe a little. It feels strange, knowing everything is being recorded. I can disable specific cameras if you want. Which ones make you uncomfortable? Oh no, that's not necessary. I was just curious about how it all works. Another lie, delivered with the same forced casualness as all the others. I was starting to wonder how long this had been going on, how many lies I'd accepted without question. Maren, is there something you want to tell me? For just a moment, I thought she might. Her face softened, and she looked like the woman I'd married 15 years ago. Young, vulnerable, maybe even sorry. Then the moment passed. No, nothing important. Just trying to be more involved in the household technology. Okay, well, I'm pretty tired. Long day. Of course. Good night. She closed the door, and I waited until I heard her moving around in the bathroom before returning to my laptop. I opened the email drafts and added one more attachment to each message. A brief summary of Blaine's access code usage over the past month, with dates and times highlighted. Then I clicked send on both emails. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Blaine. Everything really okay? Maren seems worried about something. I typed back, she's fine, probably just tired. A pause, then, cool, sleep well. I powered down the laptop and got ready for bed. Maren was already under the covers pretending to read a magazine. She didn't look up when I came out of the bathroom. Good article? I asked. Oh yes, very interesting. She was holding the magazine upside down. I got into bed and turned off my lamp. In the darkness, I could feel Maren's tension radiating across the mattress like heat from a furnace. She was lying perfectly still, but I knew she wasn't sleeping. Rowan, she whispered. What? Do you ever think about what would happen if someone tried to break into the house? Like, would the cameras really help? They'd help identify whoever did it, and the footage would be useful for insurance claims. But what if someone knew about the cameras? What if they tried to disable them or delete the recordings? I rolled over to face her, though I couldn't see her expression in the dark. That would be pretty difficult. The system has multiple backup protocols. Even if someone managed to delete the local files, everything gets uploaded to the cloud server automatically. Silence. Plus, I continued, tampering with the security system would leave its own digital trail. The logs track every access attempt, every file modification, every login. It would be almost impossible to cover up. More silence. Why do you ask? No reason. Just wondering. I lay there listening to her breathe, thinking about the emails I'd sent, and wondering how long it would take for the responses to arrive. Lisa Dorsey struck me as an early riser. Robert Chen was usually in the office by 7 a.m. Tomorrow was going to be very interesting. Maren? Yes? About that footage you wanted to review. I can pull it up first thing in the morning if you want. Crystal clear image quality, perfect audio. You'll be amazed at how much detail those cameras capture. I felt her entire body go rigid beside me. That's okay, she managed. I'm sure it's nothing important. Oh, I think you'll find it very important indeed. My phone started buzzing at 6:15 a.m. The first call was from Lisa Dorsey. Rowan, I got your email. We need to talk. I was already dressed and sitting in my home office, drinking coffee and waiting for exactly this call. Through the window, I could see Maren's car still in the driveway. She usually left for her morning yoga class by 6, but apparently she'd decided to sleep in today. I figured you'd want to see it right away, I said. I'm coming over. Is Maren there? She's still asleep. Good, don't wake her. I'll be there in 20 minutes. The line went quiet, and I checked my email. Robert Chen had responded with a single sentence. Emergency board meeting, 9 a.m. Bring everything. My phone buzzed with a text from Blaine. Running late this morning. See you at the office around 10. I wondered if he'd gotten a call from his wife yet. Probably not, or that message would have sounded very different. Lisa Dorsey arrived in 18 minutes, driving her black Mercedes like she was fleeing a crime scene. I met her at the front door before she could ring the bell. Show me, she said without preamble. I led her to my office and opened the laptop. The video clip played in high definition, crystal clear audio included. Lisa watched it twice without saying a word, her face carved from stone. How long? She asked finally. The access logs go back about a month, but this might not be the first time. A month? She stared at the screen. I was in France for 2 weeks in September, anniversary trip. Blaine said he was too busy with work to come along. I pulled up the September logs. Blaine's access code showed up 12 times during those 2 weeks, always during business hours, always when I was documented as being out of the office. Son of a dog, Lisa whispered. I'm sorry, Lisa. I know this isn't easy to see. She turned to look at me, and her expression was pure steel. Are you? Sorry, I mean? The question caught me off guard. What do you mean? Are you sorry? Or are you angry? Because if I were you, I'd be furious. I considered this. Both, I guess. But mostly, I'm tired of being lied to. What are you going to do about it? I'm not sure yet. I have a board meeting at 9. After that, I shrugged. After that, you're going to make them pay for this. It wasn't a question. Lisa stood up and smoothed down her skirt. She was a striking woman, probably 10 years younger than Blaine, with the kind of confidence that came from never having to doubt herself. I want copies of everything, she said. Every log, every video, every piece of evidence you have. Already done. I handed her a flash drive. It's all there. She pocketed the drive and headed for the door. Blaine doesn't know about this yet? I don't think so. Good. I want to be the one to tell him. She paused at the doorway. Rowan? When this all comes out, and it will come out, make sure you're ready for the fallback. Maren's going to try to blame you for everything. Let her try. After Lisa left, I sat in my office and watched Maren's morning routine through the security cameras. She was moving slowly, checking her phone every few minutes, clearly waiting for something, probably a message from Blaine telling her the coast was clear. At 7:30, she finally emerged from the bedroom and headed straight for the hallway closet. I watched her open the storage compartment and stare at the equipment, trying to work up the courage to actually touch something. She gave up after 5 minutes and went to make coffee instead. My phone rang again. This time it was Caleb Morrison, my head technician and the closest thing I had to a genuine friend at work. Boss, you might want to get down here early today. Something weird is going on. What kind of weird? Blaine's been calling the office since 6 a.m., asking if you're here yet, and there's some woman in the parking lot who's been sitting in a Mercedes for the past hour, just staring at the building. Lisa, obviously. She was probably waiting for Blaine to show up. I'll be there in 30 minutes, I told Caleb. If Blaine arrives before I do, tell him I want to see him in my office immediately. You got it, boss. Everything okay? It will be. I gathered my laptop and the backup files, then headed downstairs. Maren was in the kitchen, still in her pajamas, staring into her coffee cup like it contained the secrets of the universe. You're leaving early, she observed. Board meeting, emergency session. Her head snapped up. Emergency? What kind of emergency? The kind that requires immediate attention. I picked up my keys and headed for the garage. I'll probably be late tonight, don't wait up. Rowan, wait. I stopped at the kitchen doorway and turned back. Maren was standing by the counter, gripping her coffee mug with both hands. Is everything okay? Between us, I mean? The question hung in the air like smoke from a house fire. I could have ended it right there, could have confronted her with the evidence and demanded an explanation. Instead, I decided to let her twist in the wind a little longer. Why would you ask that? I don't know. You seem distant lately, distracted. I've been busy with work. You know how it is. Yes, I know how work can be. She was studying my face, looking for tells, demanding, time-consuming. Sometimes people get so focused on their projects that they forget about everything else. That's true, I agreed. Sometimes people do forget about their responsibilities, their commitments, the people who trust them. She flinched like I'd slapped her. I should go, I said. Don't want to be late for the meeting. The drive to the office took 15 minutes, long enough for me to mentally rehearse what I was going to say to the board. Robert Chen was a fair man, but he was also a pragmatist. He'd want to know how this situation affected the company and what steps we were taking to minimize the damage. The parking lot was nearly empty when I arrived, except for Lisa's Mercedes and Caleb's pickup truck. Lisa was still sitting in her car, talking on her phone. When she saw me, she ended the call and got out. He's not here yet, she said. He will be. Blaine's nothing if not predictable. We walked into the building together. Caleb was at his desk, pretending to work on a laptop but obviously keeping an eye on the parking lot through the window. Morning, boss, ma'am. He nodded to Lisa. Still no sign of him. That's fine. We'll wait. I led Lisa to my office and closed the door. Through the window, I could see the rest of the office space, a dozen workstations, a conference room, and Blaine's corner office with its pretentious glass walls and expensive furniture. Nice setup, Lisa said, looking around. Blaine always made it sound like he was running this place single-handedly. Blaine has a tendency to exaggerate his contributions, among other things. At 8:45, Blaine's BMW pulled into the parking lot. Lisa and I watched him get out of his car and walk toward the building. He looked relaxed, confident, completely unaware that his world was about to implode. Showtime, Lisa murmured. Blaine came through the front door with his usual swagger, expensive suit perfectly tailored, briefcase in one hand and phone in the other. He nodded to Caleb, then headed straight for my office. He stopped short when he saw Lisa sitting in the chair across from my desk. Lisa, what are you doing here? Waiting for you, darling. The endearment dripped with enough poison to stop a charging bull. Blaine looked confused for about 3 seconds, then his face went pale as understanding dawned. I can explain, he started. Oh, please do, Lisa said sweetly. I'm very eager to hear this explanation. I opened my laptop and turned the screen so Blaine could see it. The video clip was already queued up, paused on a frame that showed him and Maren entering the guest room together. Recognize this? I asked. Blaine's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. No sound came out. It gets better, I continued, clicking play. The audio quality is really quite good. Maren's laughter echoed from the laptop speakers, followed by Blaine's voice saying something about how long they had before I got back from my meeting. Lisa stood up slowly, her movements controlled and deliberate. 47 minutes, she said. That's how long you were in there. I timed it. Lisa, I can explain everything. No need. It's all very clear. She walked over to where Blaine was standing and smiled up at him. I've already called my lawyer. And my brother. You remember my brother, don't you? The one who handles asset protection for high net worth divorces? Blaine's face went from pale to gray. You can't be serious. Serious. By the end of the week, you're going to discover just how little of our life together actually belongs to you. My phone buzzed with a text from Robert Chen. Conference room. Now. Board meeting, I announced, standing up. Blaine, you're expected to attend. I'm not going anywhere, Blaine said, but his voice cracked on the last word. Actually, you are. Lisa stepped closer to him. You're going to go into that meeting, and you're going to explain to the board why you've been using company time to have an affair with your business partner's wife. And then you're going to come home with me so we can have a very long conversation about our future together. Lisa, please, move. The conference room was on the second floor, a sterile space with a long table and uncomfortable chairs. Robert Chen was already there, along with the other 3 board members. They looked like they were attending a funeral, which wasn't far from the truth. "Gentlemen," Robert said as we filed in, "and Mrs. Dorsey, thank you for coming." He gestured for us to sit. I took my usual spot at the far end of the table. Blaine sat across from me, still looking like he might throw up. Lisa remained standing behind his chair. "I've reviewed the materials Rowan sent last night," Robert continued. "Obviously, this situation presents some significant challenges for the company." "It's not what it looks like," Blaine said desperately. "Really?" Robert opened his laptop and turned it around. "Because it looks like you've been using your access to company resources to facilitate an extramarital affair. The timestamps show you've been leaving work during business hours to visit Rowan's house on multiple occasions. That's not illegal. No, but it's a violation of your partnership agreement. Section 12, subsection 4. Partners are expected to maintain professional standards that reflect positively on the company's reputation." I'd forgotten about that clause. It had been Blaine's idea to include it, back when we were worried about one of our smaller partners developing a gambling problem. "This is a private matter," Blaine tried again. "It became a company matter when you started using company time and resources," Robert replied. "The board has voted. Your partnership is terminated, effective immediately." The words hit Blaine like a physical blow. "You can't do this." "We can, and we have. Your equity stake will be bought out according to the terms of the partnership agreement, minus appropriate penalties for breach of contract." Lisa leaned down and whispered something in Blaine's ear. Whatever she said made him flinch. "What about Maren?" one of the other board members asked. "She's also a partner." "Maren's situation is more complicated," Robert admitted. "She hasn't technically violated any partnership agreements, but given the circumstances, we'll need to discuss her future role carefully." I spoke up for the first time since entering the room. "I'll handle Maren." The way I said it made everyone look at me with new attention. "Rowan," Robert said carefully, "we understand this is a difficult situation for you personally, but we need to make sure any decisions are made in the company's best interests." "They will be." The meeting ended 20 minutes later. Blaine was escorted out by building security, Lisa following close behind like a shark tracking wounded prey. I stayed behind to discuss transition plans with the board. By the time I got back to my office, it was nearly noon. Caleb was waiting for me with a cup of coffee and a concerned expression. "Rough morning, boss?" "You could say that." Word's already spreading around town. My wife heard from her sister that Lisa Dorsey was seen screaming at Blaine in the parking lot of the bank. Small towns. Information traveled faster than light and with about as much accuracy as a game of telephone. What else is she saying? That Blaine tried to withdraw money from their joint accounts and found out Lisa had already frozen everything. Caleb grinned. Apparently he's staying at the Comfort Inn now. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. My phone buzzed with a text from Maren. "How did the meeting go?" I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "Very productive. We'll talk when I get home." Her response came immediately. "Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine, just some personnel changes." A longer pause, then, "What kind of changes?" "The kind that affect people who don't take their responsibilities seriously." I turned off my phone and spent the rest of the afternoon working on actual business, trying to figure out how to restructure our operations without Blaine's contributions. It was easier than I'd expected. Turned out he'd been less essential than he'd always claimed. At 6 o'clock, I finally headed home. Maren's car was in the driveway, but so was an unfamiliar Honda Civic. Through the kitchen window, I could see two figures sitting at our dining room table. I parked in the garage and entered through the side door. Maren was in the kitchen with her best friend Ava, a woman who'd never met a piece of gossip she couldn't improve with creative embellishment. "Rowan!" Ava jumped up from her chair like I'd caught her stealing silverware. "I was just keeping Maren company. I hope you don't mind." "Not at all." I looked at Maren, who was staring into her wine glass with the intensity of a fortune teller reading tea leaves. "How was your day, honey?" "Fine," she said without looking up. "Quiet." I'm sure it was. Ava was practically vibrating with curiosity. "Maren told me there was some kind of emergency at work today. I hope everything's okay." "Just a partnership restructuring. Nothing too dramatic." "Oh, well, that's good." She looked disappointed that I wasn't providing more details. "I should probably get going. Early day tomorrow." After Ava left, Maren and I sat across from each other at the dining room table. The silence stretched between us like a taut wire. "So," she said finally, "what kind of personnel changes?" "Blaine's no longer with the company." Her wine glass slipped from her fingers and shattered on the hardwood floor. Red wine splashed across the white tablecloth like spilled paint. "What happened?" she whispered. I got up to get paper towels, taking my time cleaning up the mess. When I sat back down, Maren was staring at me with wide, frightened eyes. "He violated his partnership agreement," I said. "The board voted to terminate his contract." "But why? What did he do?" "You know what he did, Maren." The words hung in the air between us. I watched her face cycle through several expressions: confusion, realization, fear, and finally, a kind of desperate calculation. "I don't know what you're talking about." "The hallway camera, Tuesday afternoon, 47 minutes. She went completely still, like a deer caught in headlights. "Rowan, I can explain." "I'm sure you can, but I don't think I want to hear it." I stood up and headed for my office. Behind me, I heard Maren start to cry. It sounded genuine, but then again, she'd always been good at crying on command. My phone was full of missed calls and text messages. 3 from Blaine, 2 from Lisa, 1 from Robert Chen, and a dozen from numbers I didn't recognize. Word was definitely spreading. I deleted Blaine's messages without reading them and called Lisa back. "How's the Comfort Inn?" I asked when she answered. "Expensive, apparently. He's already complaining about the cost." She sounded almost cheerful. "My lawyer says the divorce should be finalized within 6 months. Blaine's going to be very surprised when he finds out how much alimony he's not getting." "What about the house?" "Mine. Along with the cars, the boat, and about 80% of our investment portfolio. Turns out adultery clauses are still enforceable in this state." "Good for you. What about Maren?" I looked toward the dining room where my wife was still sitting at the table, staring at the wine stain on the tablecloth. "I'm still deciding. Whatever you do, make it count. People like them need to understand that actions have consequences." After I hung up, I sat in my office and thought about consequences. Maren had betrayed our marriage, our business partnership, and 15 years of shared history. She'd lied to my face, snuck around behind my back, and probably would have kept doing it indefinitely if I hadn't caught her. The question was, what was I going to do about it? I opened my laptop and started typing. The next morning, I woke up alone. Maren's side of the bed was cold, the sheets undisturbed. I found her in the guest room, the same room where she'd entertained Blaine just 2 days earlier. The irony wasn't lost on me. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, still wearing yesterday's clothes, staring at her phone like it might spontaneously combust. When I knocked on the doorframe, she looked up with red-rimmed eyes. "I tried calling him," she said. "Blaine. He won't answer. I imagine he's got bigger problems right now. This is all a mistake, Rowan. A terrible misunderstanding." I leaned against the doorframe and studied her face. Even after everything, even with the evidence laid out in high definition, she was still trying to lie her way out of this. What exactly did I misunderstand? It's not what you think. Blaine and we're not. She struggled to find the words. It's complicated. 47 minutes of complicated? She flinched. You don't understand the pressure I've been under. The business, the finances, trying to keep everything together while you've been so distant and distracted. So this is my fault? That's not what I said. It's what you implied. She stood up and walked to the window, wrapping her arms around herself like she was cold. I made a mistake, a terrible mistake, but it doesn't have to ruin everything we've built together. Everything we've built? I laughed, and the sound came out harsh and bitter. Maren, you destroyed everything we built the moment you brought him into our house. It was just one time. The access logs show 17 visits in the past month. Her shoulders sagged. Okay, more than once. But it didn't mean anything. It was just physical. A release. It had nothing to do with our marriage. Our marriage is over. The words came out flat and final, surprising me with their certainty. I'd been thinking about divorce since yesterday, but saying it out loud made it real. Maren spun around to face me. You can't mean that. I've already called a lawyer. Rowan, please. We can work through this. Counseling, therapy, whatever it takes. There's nothing to work through. You made your choice. It wasn't a choice. It was a mistake. 17 mistakes. My phone buzzed with a text from Caleb. Boss, you need to see the news. Channel 7. I pulled up the local news website on my phone. The headline made me smile. Local business partnership dissolves amid adultery scandal. The article was brief, but damaging. Someone had leaked the story to the press, complete with enough details to make it clear who was involved. Blaine's name was mentioned prominently, along with his wife's plans for divorce. The company was described as restructuring following the departure of a key partner due to personal misconduct. We made the news, I told Maren, showing her the screen. She read the article twice, her face growing paler with each word. Who would do this? Who would tell them? Does it matter? Of course it matters. This makes us look like some kind of soap opera. You made us a soap opera. She sank back down onto the bed. My mother's going to see this. My friends, my yoga class, everyone. You should have thought about that before you started sleeping with my business partner. What am I supposed to do now? I honestly don't care. I left her sitting in the guest room and went downstairs to make coffee. Through the kitchen window, I could see our neighbor Vera working in her garden. She waved when she saw me, then made an exaggerated gesture toward Maren's car, raising her eyebrows in a question. News traveled fast in our neighborhood. I waved back and shrugged as if to say, "What can you do?" Vera nodded sympathetically and went back to her flowers. My phone rang. Robert Chen. Rowan, have you seen the news coverage? Just read it. We need to get ahead of this. The board wants to schedule a press conference for this afternoon. Nothing dramatic, just a brief statement about the company's stability and future plans. What about Maren? What about her? The article doesn't mention her specifically, but it won't take long for people to connect the dots. Robert was quiet for a moment. The board discussed this yesterday. We think it might be best if Maren took a leave of absence while things settle down. A leave of absence? Temporary, just until the media attention dies down. I understood what he wasn't saying. Maren's leave of absence would become permanent if she couldn't rehabilitate her reputation quickly enough. The company couldn't afford to be associated with scandal. I'll talk to her, I said. Actually, the board thinks it might be better if the conversation came from someone else. More official. You're firing her. We're giving her an opportunity to step away gracefully. After Robert hung up, I sat at the kitchen counter and thought about the chain reaction I'd set in motion. Blaine was unemployed and getting divorced. Maren was about to lose her job and her marriage. The company was restructuring around the scandal, all because I'd come home early from a canceled conference. Maren appeared in the kitchen doorway, showered and dressed, but still looking like she'd been hit by a truck. "I need to go to the office," she said. "Try to do some damage control." "I wouldn't." "What do you mean?" "Robert Chen is going to call you this morning. The board wants you to take a leave of absence." She stared at me. "They can't do that." "They can, and they will. It's already decided. But I haven't done anything wrong, not professionally. You've become a liability. This is unbelievable. First Blaine, now me. What's next? Are you going to fire yourself?" "I'm not the one who had an affair." She slammed her hand down on the counter. "This is insane. You're destroying everything out of spite." "I'm not destroying anything. I'm just refusing to pretend it didn't happen. So what's your plan, Rowan? Burn everything down and start over?" "Something like that." My phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from an unknown number. "This isn't over. We need to talk. B." I showed the message to Maren. "Your boyfriend wants to chat." "He's not my boyfriend." "What is he then?" She didn't answer. "I'm going to the office," I said. "When Robert calls, I suggest you take the leave of absence. It's better than being fired." "Where am I supposed to go? What am I supposed to do?" "I don't know, Maren. Figure it out." The drive to the office took me past the Comfort Inn where Blaine was staying. His BMW was in the parking lot, looking out of place among the economy cars and pickup trucks. I wondered what he was doing in there, whether he was planning some kind of counterattack or just wallowing in self-pity. The office was buzzing with activity when I arrived. Caleb met me at the door with a cup of coffee and a stack of phone messages. "Reporters," he explained. 3 different news stations and 2 newspapers. They all want statements about the partnership dissolution. "What did you tell them?" "That all media inquiries should be directed to the board of directors." Good man. I spent the morning fielding calls from clients who'd heard the news and wanted reassurance about the company's stability. Most were satisfied with my explanations, but a few seemed nervous about the scandal. I made notes about which accounts might need extra attention in the coming weeks. At 11:30, Robert Chen arrived for the press conference preparation. He brought a communications consultant, a sharp woman in her 40s who specialized in crisis management. "The key is to stay focused on the business," she explained. "Emphasize stability, continuity, and professional standards. Don't get drawn into discussions about personal relationships or individual conduct." "What if they ask about Maren specifically?" "Personnel matters are confidential. You can't comment on individual employment situations." The press conference was held in the main conference room at 2 o'clock. 5 reporters showed up, along with camera crews from 2 local TV stations. I sat at the head of the table with Robert and the communications consultant flanking me. The questions were predictable. How would Blaine's departure affect operations? Was the company financially stable? Were there other personnel changes planned? I answered everything professionally, sticking to the script we'd rehearsed. Yes, the company was stable. No, there were no other immediate changes planned. Yes, we were confident in our ability to serve our clients effectively. Then one of the reporters asked the question I'd been dreading. "Mr. Carrick, can you comment on reports that the partnership dissolution was related to personal misconduct involving your wife?" The room went silent. I could feel every eye in the room focused on my face, waiting to see how I'd respond. "I can't comment on personnel matters," I said carefully. "But I will say that this company has always maintained the highest professional standards, and that won't change going forward." "So you're not denying that your wife was involved?" "I'm not commenting on personnel matters." The reporter pressed further. "Sources close to the situation suggest that Mrs. Carrick was having an affair with the departed partner. Can you confirm or deny that allegation?" I looked at Robert, who gave me an almost imperceptible nod. "My personal life is exactly that. Personal," I said. But I want to be clear that this company's professional standards apply to everyone, regardless of their relationship to me. It wasn't quite a confirmation, but it was close enough. The reporters understood what I wasn't saying. After the press conference, I retreated to my office to decompress. The communications consultant had seemed pleased with how it went, but I felt like I'd just thrown a grenade into my own life. My phone had 17 missed calls, 3 from Maren, 2 from numbers I didn't recognize, and 12 from Blaine. I called Maren back first. "How could you do that?" she said without preamble. "How could you essentially confirm their suspicions on live television?" "I didn't confirm anything." "You might as well have. Everyone who sees that interview will know exactly what happened." "Good. Good? Rowan, you just humiliated me in front of the entire town. You humiliated yourself. I just refused to cover for you. This is vindictive and cruel. This is honest." She hung up on me. I deleted Blaine's messages without listening to them and headed home. The local news was already running clips from the press conference, with analysis from talking heads who seemed to know remarkably little about the actual situation. Maren's car wasn't in the driveway when I arrived. I found a note on the kitchen counter. "Gone to my mother's. Need time to think." Her mother lived 3 hours away in Connecticut, far enough to avoid the immediate fallout, close enough to come back when things settled down. I crumpled up the note and threw it away. That evening, I sat in my office and reviewed everything that had happened over the past 3 days. Blaine was unemployed and homeless. Maren was unemployed and in hiding. The company was restructuring. The whole town was talking. And somehow, I felt better than I had in months. The feeling surprised me as it settled in, a quiet loosening in my chest that I hadn't realized was possible anymore. It wasn't happiness, not exactly, but a steadiness, like my feet had finally found solid ground after weeks of slipping. The office felt calmer than it had in a long time, the hum of the air conditioner blending with the muted sounds of the building, and for a brief moment I let myself sit in that calm without questioning it. My phone rang. Lisa Dorsey. The screen lit up with her name, and I exhaled before answering, already bracing myself for whatever angle she'd bring. With Lisa, there was always an angle, but there was also an honesty I trusted more than most. "I saw the press conference," she said. "Nicely done." I pictured her sitting somewhere immaculate and sunlit, legs crossed, glass of something chilled within reach. Compliments from Lisa were never careless, and that made them land harder. "Thanks." It was all I could manage without sounding either smug or exhausted, both of which I felt in equal measure. Blaine's been calling me all day, begging for another chance. Apparently, he thinks if he can get Maren to take him back, I might reconsider the divorce. The bitterness that rose in me was sharp but familiar, like pressing on a bruise to see if it still hurt. Of course, Blaine would think the women in his life existed to tidy up the messes he'd made. That's not going to happen. The words came out flat, unadorned, carrying more certainty than anger. Which part? Her tone was light, almost playful, but I could hear the steel beneath it. Either part. She laughed. I was hoping you'd say that. Listen, I'm having a little gathering this weekend. Just a few friends, some wine, maybe some gossip about recent local events. You should come. I glanced around my office, at the half-empty shelves and the papers stacked too neatly, the remnants of a life in transition. The idea of casual conversation and knowing looks made my shoulders tense. I don't think I'm ready for social events yet. The admission tasted like weakness, even though I knew it wasn't. Think about it. Sometimes the best way to move forward is to show everyone you're not hiding. Her words lingered after she said them, hanging in the air like a challenge disguised as advice. After she hung up, I considered her invitation. She was probably right about not hiding. The town was already talking. Might as well give them something interesting to talk about. I stared out the window at the gray sky pressing low over the buildings, imagining whispered conversations cutting short when I walked into a room. If they were going to speculate anyway, maybe it was better to meet it head-on. I opened my laptop and started researching divorce lawyers. It was time to make this official. Each click felt strangely ceremonial, the language on the websites clinical and reassuring all at once. I took notes I didn't need, read reviews too carefully, and finally bookmarked a few names, my reflection faintly visible in the darkened screen between pages. Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance. Another storm was coming, but this time I was ready for it. The sound rolled through the air like a warning and a promise, and instead of flinching, I found myself nodding as if the sky were acknowledging a decision I'd already made. The next morning brought more reporters, more phone calls, and more drama. Maren had apparently given an interview to a Hartford newspaper, painting herself as the victim of a vindictive husband and an unfair business environment. By mid-morning, my inbox was a minefield, and Caleb was fielding calls with the tight politeness of someone who'd stopped being surprised. I printed the article anyway, needing to see the words on paper. Mrs. Carrick describes the situation as a witch hunt, the article read, claiming her husband has used his position in the company to destroy her career over what she calls a personal disagreement. I felt my jaw tighten as I reread the phrase, the quotation marks doing nothing to soften the insult. A personal disagreement, as if adultery was just a difference of opinion about dinner plans. The absurdity almost made me laugh, but the sound never came. I was still reading the article when Caleb knocked on my office door. His knock was tentative, followed by a pause that told me he already knew I wouldn't like what came next. "Boss, there's someone here to see you. Says it's urgent." I folded the paper slowly, buying myself a second to prepare. Blaine walked into my office like he owned the place, which was ironic considering he'd been escorted out by security just 2 days earlier. He looked terrible, unshaven, wrinkled clothes, eyes red from lack of sleep. The smell of stale cologne followed him in, and for a fleeting moment, I saw the man he used to be, the one who thought charm could fix anything. "We need to talk," he said. His voice cracked at the edges, frustration and desperation bleeding through. "No, we don't." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "Rowan, this has gone far enough. You've made your point." He spread his hands as if appealing to reason, to some shared history that no longer mattered. "Have I?" I watched his face closely, noting the flicker of uncertainty. "You've destroyed my career, my marriage, my reputation. What more do you want?" The words tumbled out of him, rehearsed and raw at the same time. I leaned back in my chair and studied his face. "I want you to understand something, Blaine. I didn't destroy anything. You did that yourself." "By making one mistake?" 17 mistakes. "Fine, 17 mistakes. But it's over now. Maren and I were done. There's no reason to keep punishing us." "You think this is punishment? What would you call it?" "Justice." He stared at me for a long moment. "You know what? You're enjoying this. You're actually enjoying watching our lives fall apart. Maybe a little. That's sick, Rowan. What's sick is sleeping with your business partner's wife in his own house. It wasn't supposed to happen. It just did. 17 times. Okay, fine. We were having an affair, we were wrong, but it's over now and we're both paying the price. What more do you want?" I stood up and walked around my desk until I was standing directly in front of him. "I want you to leave my office, leave this building, and never contact me or my wife again. Rowan, I want you to understand that your actions have consequences, and those consequences don't end just because you're sorry. This isn't over." "Yes, it is." After Blaine left, I called building security and had them add his name to the banned visitor list. Then I called my lawyer and scheduled an appointment for the next day. It was time to end this properly. That afternoon, I drove to Lisa Dorsey's house for her gathering. She lived in an upscale neighborhood about 10 minutes from my office, in a modern colonial with perfectly manicured landscaping and a circular driveway. The party was already in progress when I arrived. About 20 people were scattered around the living room and kitchen, most of whom I recognized from various business and social events over the years. The conversation stopped when I walked in, then resumed with the forced casualness of people trying not to stare. Lisa met me at the door with a glass of wine and a knowing smile. "Look what the cat dragged in," she announced to the room. "Everyone, you remember Rowan Carrick." A chorus of greetings followed, along with some sympathetic looks and a few barely concealed expressions of curiosity. I was definitely the main attraction tonight. "How are you holding up?" asked Janet Morrison, the wife of one of our former clients. "This whole situation must be so difficult for you." "I'm managing. It's just terrible when these things happen. Such a shock when you think you know someone." "Yes, it certainly can be." The conversation continued in that vein for the next hour. Everyone wanted to express their sympathy while fishing for details about the scandal. I gave them enough to satisfy their curiosity without saying anything that could be used against me later. Around 8 o'clock, Lisa pulled me aside. "You're handling this well," she said. "Better than I expected." "What did you expect?" "I don't know. More anger, maybe. More visible pain." "I'm angry, but I'm also relieved." "Relieved?" "It's over. The lying, the pretending, the wondering if I was imagining things. It's all out in the open now." "And that feels good?" "It feels honest." She nodded thoughtfully. "Blaine came by earlier today, before the party." "What did he want?" "To convince me to give him another chance. He seems to think if he can prove he's sorry enough, everything can go back to the way it was." "What did you tell him?" "I told him that some things can't be undone." "Good advice." "He also asked about you. Wanted to know if you were planning any other vindictive moves, as he put it." "What did you tell him?" "That he should probably assume the worst and plan accordingly." I laughed, despite myself. "You're enjoying this too?" "Absolutely. Is that wrong?" "Probably. But I don't care." The party wound down around 10 o'clock. I was one of the last to leave, having spent the evening fielding questions and accepting condolences from people who were clearly fascinated by the drama unfolding in their social circle. As I was heading for the door, Lisa stopped me again. "Rowan, what's your next move?" "Divorce papers. I'm filing on Monday." "Good. Don't let her drag it out." "I won't." "And if Blaine tries to contact you again?" "He won't." "How can you be sure?" "Because if he does, I'll make sure the rest of his dirty laundry gets aired publicly. And trust me, there's more where that came from." She smiled. "I was hoping you'd say something like that." I drove home through empty streets, thinking about the evening and the strange satisfaction I'd felt in finally being honest about what had happened. For months, I'd been living with the suspicion that something was wrong in my marriage. Now that the truth was out, I felt like I could breathe again. The house was dark when I arrived. Maren was still at her mother's, probably planning her next move. I didn't care what it was. Whatever she decided to do, it wouldn't change the outcome. I poured myself a drink and sat in my office, looking at the security monitor that showed the empty hallway where this had all started. The camera was still recording, still logging every movement, still creating a digital record of everything that happened in my house. Some people might have turned it off, might have wanted privacy after everything that had happened, but I left it running. After all, you never knew what you might need to prove. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This isn't over. You'll regret this." I stared at the message for a moment, then deleted it and blocked the number. Tomorrow I would file for divorce. Next week, I would restructure the business. Next month, I would start rebuilding my life without the weight of lies and betrayal dragging me down. But tonight, I was going to finish my drink and enjoy the silence of a house where I no longer had to wonder what secrets were being kept. It was the most peaceful I'd felt in months. The storm that had been threatening all day finally arrived around midnight, rain lashing against the windows and thunder shaking the house. But I slept better than I had in years, secure in the knowledge that the worst was behind me. I was wrong, of course. The worst was yet to come. But for that one night, I allowed myself to believe that justice had been served and that the truth had set me free. It was a nice feeling while it lasted. 3 weeks later, I was reviewing quarterly reports when Caleb burst into my office without knocking. "Boss, you need to see this." He was holding his phone, his face a mixture of anger and disbelief. I looked at the screen. It was a Facebook post from Maren, dated that morning. After much reflection, I've decided to share my truth about the recent events that have turned my life upside down. My husband has waged a campaign of harassment and intimidation against me and someone I care about, using his position and resources to destroy our reputations and livelihoods. The media has portrayed this as a simple case of adultery, but the reality is far more complex. I was trapped in an emotionally distant marriage with a controlling man who monitored my every move and made me feel like a prisoner in my own home. When I found comfort with someone who understood my situation, my husband used his surveillance system to spy on us, then systematically destroyed our lives out of spite. I'm sharing this because I want people to understand that there are always two sides to every story, and the version you've heard is only one of them. The post had been shared 47 times and had over 100 comments, most of them supportive. Phrases like, "so brave," and "tell your truth," and "men like that are dangerous," filled the comment thread. "She's trying to flip the narrative," Caleb said. "Make herself the victim." I handed him back his phone and returned to my reports. "Let her try." "Boss, this is serious. She's accusing you of harassment and intimidation. What if people believe her?" "Some people will believe her. Some people will believe me. Most people will move on to the next scandal within a week." "But what if she doesn't stop here? What if she goes to the police, claims you've been stalking her or threatening her?" I looked up from my paperwork. Caleb had a point. Maren was clearly escalating, trying to regain control of the narrative by painting herself as the victim of an abusive husband. It was a smart strategy, and it might work. "What do you suggest?" "Fight back. Set the record straight." "How?" "The same way she's doing it. Social media, interviews, whatever it takes." I considered this. The idea of engaging in a public mudslinging contest with my estranged wife held no appeal. But if I didn't respond, her version of events might become the accepted truth. "Let me think about it." That afternoon, I got a call from my divorce lawyer. "Rowan, we need to talk. Maren's attorney has filed a motion for a restraining order." "On what grounds?" "Harassment, intimidation, and invasion of privacy. They're claiming you've been using your business resources to monitor and threaten her." "That's ridiculous." "Maybe, but they've got that Facebook post as evidence of her mental state, plus testimony from several people who say you've been bragging about destroying her reputation." I thought about the party at Lisa's house, the conversations I'd had with various people over the past few weeks. Had I been bragging, or just being honest about what had happened? What's the worst-case scenario? If the judge grants the restraining order, you could be prohibited from contacting Maren directly, going to certain locations where she might be present, and potentially using your security system to monitor her activities. She doesn't even live here anymore. Doesn't matter. The order could still restrict your behavior in ways that affect the divorce proceedings. When's the hearing? Friday morning. We need to prepare a response. After I hung up, I sat in my office and tried to figure out how things had gotten so complicated. 3 weeks ago, I'd been the wronged husband exposing his wife's adultery. Now I was potentially facing a restraining order based on accusations of harassment and intimidation. Maren was smarter than I'd given her credit for. My phone buzzed with a text from Lisa Dorsey. Saw the Facebook post. We need to talk. I called her back immediately. This is bad, she said without preamble. Maren's playing the victim card, and it's working. Half the women in town are rallying to her defense. What are they saying? That you're a controlling husband who used technology to spy on your wife, then destroyed her life when she tried to find happiness elsewhere. That's not what happened. I know that, and you know that. But perception is reality in situations like this. So what do I do? Fight back, but carefully. You can't look like you're attacking a victim, even if she's not really a victim. Any suggestions? Actually, yes. There's someone you should meet. An hour later, I was sitting in a coffee shop downtown, waiting for Lisa's mystery contact. She'd described him as someone who specializes in reputation management, which could mean anything from a public relations expert to a private investigator. Derek Hawthorne turned out to be both. He was a lean man in his 50s with graying hair and the kind of quiet intensity that suggested he'd seen everything and been surprised by none of it. Lisa filled me in on the basics, he said, sliding into the booth across from me. Your wife is trying to rewrite history, and you need to make sure the truth doesn't get buried in the process. What do you suggest? First, we need to document everything. Every interaction you've had with Maren since this started, every conversation with mutual friends, every piece of evidence that supports your version of events. I've got the video footage, the access logs, all of that. Good, but we need more. Character witnesses, people who can testify to your behavior and hers over the past few months. Anyone who might have suspected the affair before you discovered it. I thought about this. There might be a few people. We also need to be proactive about controlling the narrative. Maren's gotten the first word in, but she doesn't get the last word. Meaning? Meaning, you're going to tell your side of the story. Publicly, professionally, and in a way that makes it clear who the real victim is here. Derek outlined his strategy over the next hour. It was comprehensive, aggressive, and probably more than I needed for a simple divorce case. But it was also exactly what I wanted to hear. How much is this going to cost? I asked. Less than losing everything in a divorce settlement skewed by false accusations. Fair point. We shook hands, and Derek promised to have a preliminary report ready by the end of the week. As I was leaving the coffee shop, my phone rang. Mr. Carrick, this is Detective Sarah Williams with the county police. I'd like to schedule a time to speak with you about some allegations that have been made. My heart rate spiked. What kind of allegations? I'd prefer to discuss this in person. Are you available tomorrow morning? Am I under arrest? No, sir. This is just a preliminary interview. Do I need a lawyer? That's your choice, but you're not being charged with anything at this time. After I hung up, I sat in my car for 10 minutes, trying to process what was happening. Maren wasn't just trying to win the divorce. She was trying to destroy me completely. I called Derek Hawthorne. The police want to interview me, I told him. About what? They wouldn't say, but I can guess. Don't go alone. I'll recommend a criminal attorney who specializes in these kinds of cases. These kinds of cases? Domestic disputes where one party tries to weaponize the legal system against the other. How often does that happen? More often than you'd think. The next morning, I sat in a sterile conference room at the county police station with my new attorney, a sharp woman named Patricia Vance, who'd handled dozens of similar cases. Detective Williams was younger than I'd expected, probably in her early 30s, with the kind of professional demeanor that gave nothing away. Mr. Carrick, I appreciate you coming in voluntarily, she began. I want to ask you about your relationship with your wife and some concerns that have been raised about your behavior. What kind of concerns? Allegations of harassment, intimidation, and invasion of privacy. Patricia leaned forward. Detective, can you be more specific about these allegations? Mrs. Carrick claims her husband has been using his business resources to monitor her activities, has made threatening statements about her and her associate, and has engaged in a campaign to damage her reputation and employment prospects. I started to respond, but Patricia put a hand on my arm. Detective, my client discovered his wife's extramarital affair through legitimate security footage from his own home. His subsequent actions have been entirely within his legal rights as a property owner and business partner. What about the public statements, the press conference where he essentially confirmed the affair? My client answered questions honestly about his company's personnel decisions. He's under no legal obligation to protect his wife's reputation at the expense of the truth. The interview continued for another hour, covering everything from the security system installation to the board meeting where Blaine was terminated. Detective Williams was thorough but fair, and by the end I got the impression she wasn't entirely convinced by Maren's allegations. Mr. Carrick, I have to ask, do you have any intention of harming your wife or Mr. Dorsey? Absolutely not. Have you made any threats against either of them? No. Have you used your business resources to monitor Mrs. Carrick's activities since she moved out of your home? No. Patricia spoke up again. Detective, my client has been the victim of adultery and betrayal. His response has been measured and legal. If Mrs. Carrick is uncomfortable with the consequences of her actions, that's not grounds for criminal charges. After we left the police station, Patricia and I discussed strategy over lunch. They're not going to charge you, she said. There's no evidence of actual harassment or threats, just hurt feelings and public embarrassment. What about the restraining order? That's a different matter. The standard for a civil restraining order is much lower than for criminal charges. So she might get it. She might, but even if she does, it won't necessarily hurt you in the divorce proceedings. Judges understand that people say things when they're angry. That evening, I met with Derek Hawthorne to review his preliminary findings. He'd been busy over the past 2 days, interviewing mutual friends and acquaintances, reviewing social media posts, and building a timeline of events. The good news is that most people don't believe Maren's victim narrative, he said. The bad news is that enough people do to make this a problem. What did you find? Several people remember Maren acting strangely over the past few months. Secretive phone calls, unexplained absences, defensive behavior when asked about her activities. A few people even suspected she was having an affair. That's helpful. There's more. I found evidence that Maren and Blaine have been in contact since the scandal broke. Text messages, social media interactions, even a hotel registration from last weekend. They're still seeing each other? Looks like it, which undermines her claim that she was just seeking comfort from an emotionally distant marriage. Derek showed me printouts of text messages between Maren and Blaine, recovered from social media metadata and hotel records. The messages were affectionate, even romantic, and clearly showed an ongoing relationship rather than a regretful mistake. Can we use this in court? Absolutely. It proves she's been lying about the nature of the relationship and the extent of her involvement with Blaine. What's our next move? We go public with the truth. All of it. Derek had prepared a comprehensive response to Maren's Facebook post, complete with documentation, timestamps, and witness statements. It was devastating, methodical, and absolutely factual. Are you sure about this? I asked. Once we put this out there, there's no taking it back. She fired the first shot. Now we finish the fight. I approved the response, and Derek posted it to a new Facebook page he'd created specifically for this purpose. Within hours, it had been shared dozens of times and had generated hundreds of comments. The tide of public opinion was shifting, but Maren wasn't finished. The next morning, I woke up to find my driveway blocked by a news van. A reporter was standing on my front lawn, speaking into a camera about the escalating war between estranged spouses that has captivated the local community. I called Derek. She gave an interview to Channel 7, he explained. Tears, Trembling voice, the whole performance. She's claiming you've escalated your harassment campaign and that she fears for her safety. This is getting out of hand. Yes, it is, which is why we're going to end it today. How? Press conference this afternoon. We're going to lay out every piece of evidence, every lie she's told, every inconsistency in her story. By the time we're done, no one will believe a word she says. The press conference was held in the conference room of Derek's office building. 5 reporters showed up, along with camera crews from 3 local stations. I sat at a table with Derek and Patricia, facing a room full of people who were clearly expecting drama. Derek spoke first, outlining the timeline of events and presenting the evidence methodically. The video footage, the access logs, the text messages between Maren and Blaine, the hotel records showing their continued relationship. Mrs. Carrick has portrayed herself as the victim of an abusive husband, Derek said. The evidence tells a different story. The evidence shows a woman who conducted a months-long affair, lied repeatedly to cover it up, and is now trying to rewrite history to avoid the consequences of her actions. The reporters asked the predictable questions. I answered them calmly, factually, without emotion. Yes, I'd been hurt by the betrayal. No, I'd never threatened anyone. Yes, I wanted the truth to be known. Mr. Carrick, one reporter asked, your wife claims you've been monitoring her activities since she moved out. Is that true? I haven't had any contact with my wife since she left our home 3 weeks ago. I have no idea where she's staying or what she's doing, nor do I care. What about the social media posts that have been critical of her? Did you have anything to do with those? Derek answered that one. Mr. Carrick has not posted anything on social media about this situation. The posts you're referring to were made by other people who have their own opinions about Mrs. Carrick's behavior. What's your goal here, Mr. Carrick? What do you want to achieve? I looked directly into the camera. I want the truth to be known. I want people to understand what really happened. And I want to move on with my life. The press conference lasted 45 minutes. By the time it was over, I felt like I'd been through a battle, but I also felt like I'd won. That evening, the local news led with the story. The coverage was balanced, presenting both sides but clearly favoring the version supported by evidence. Maren's tearful interview was shown alongside the documentation Derek had presented, and the contrast was stark. My phone rang constantly for the next 2 hours. Reporters, friends, acquaintances, even a few strangers who'd gotten my number somehow. I turned it off and sat in my office, watching the security monitor that showed my empty driveway. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. The restraining order hearing the next morning was almost anticlimactic. Maren showed up with her lawyer, looking pale and defeated. The judge reviewed the evidence, listened to both sides, and denied the motion. Mrs. Carrick, I understand you're going through a difficult time, the judge said, but the evidence doesn't support your allegations of harassment or intimidation. Mr. Carrick has acted within his legal rights throughout this process. Outside the courthouse, Maren tried to approach me. Rowan, please. Can we talk? No. I know you hate me, but we need to figure out how to end this. It is ended. The divorce isn't final. We still have to divide the assets, figure out the business arrangements. My lawyer will handle that. It doesn't have to be this way. We could try to work things out amicably. I stopped walking and turned to face her. Maren, you destroyed our marriage, tried to destroy my reputation, and attempted to have me arrested on false charges. There's nothing amicable about any of this. I was scared. I made mistakes. You made choices. Can't you forgive me? Can't we at least try to be civil? I looked at her standing there on the courthouse steps, and for a moment I remembered the woman I'd married 15 years ago. Young, hopeful, full of dreams about our future together. That woman was gone. Had been gone for a long time, probably. No, I said. We can't. I walked away and didn't look back. 6 months later, the divorce was final. Maren got half the house equity and a small settlement. I kept the business, the security system, and my reputation intact. Blaine moved to another state after his own divorce was finalized. I heard he was working for a small tech company somewhere in the Midwest, making a fraction of what he'd earned as my partner. Maren stayed in town for a while, trying to rebuild her social circle and find new employment. But the scandal had damaged her reputation too badly. Eventually, she moved away too. I still live in the same house, still run the same business, still have the same security cameras recording everything that happens in my hallway. But now, when I review the footage, all I see is an empty corridor and the occasional delivery person. It's exactly the way I like it. The truth, as it turned out, really did set me free.